But right now, credit to Haydad for sending me this earlier today. Breakout players for SEC teams. We'll give ours for Ole Miss and State, and we'll look at 24/7 Brad Crawford's picks for both Ole Miss and State and the rest of the league. But when you hear that phrase breakout player, when you're talking about Mississippi State in the 2022 season, it's the first name that comes to mind.
Well, real quick, I want to quantify this because we're going to talk about who he picked, and I don't agree with his selection at all. I think a breakout player is somebody that was on your roster a season ago that didn't have a huge season, but you expect a huge season from. So that's the definition of breakout player to me.
Yeah.
My pick would be Ra Thomas. I thought he showed a lot last year. He only caught 16 passes, but he caught 5 touchdowns. He's going to be the first. I think he's first up to replace Mekhi Polk. Bigger receiver, can get downfield, has good mobility, good speed. I could see him having a huge year for Mississippi State, being in that 70 to 100 catch range for the Bulldogs. Ra Thomas is my pick for State's breakout player.
What about somebody in the secondary? So Mississippi State's going to have a guy that will get drafted at some point. Is there... there's an easy answer probably, right?
Well, Forbes, you can't call him a breakout player. He's been good the last 2 years. I mean, he's a freshman All-American. He's been really, really good. He's one of the top corners in the SEC. Marcus Banks wouldn't fit my definition, right, because he was at Alabama last year. DeCamerion Richardson would be that guy. Played a little bit last year. You remember, what game was it? I forgot which game it was where Emerson got tossed early in the game for targeting. And they brought Richardson in, and he was really, really solid. And all the reports that I've seen coming out of spring practice is that he's been really good thus far. So he has a chance to be that second starting cornerback for Mississippi State. So that would probably be your best option there for sure.
Here's the pick that Haydad disagreed with. Massimo Biscardi. Did I do that right, like you want me to?
Yeah. Did you do the hand?
Yeah, I did the hand.
Okay.
He said, you may not have heard this name yet, but you will this season. Biscardi was... I'm saying that correctly, aren't I?
Biscardi, yeah.
Was signed out of the transfer portal from Coastal Carolina to help solve Mississippi State's kicking woes from a season ago, which the Bulldogs lost 3 games by 3 points or fewer. That doesn't tell the whole story. Mississippi State lost the Arkansas game when they missed 3 field goals and lost. It wasn't just that they lost a close game. It was make 1 of 3, and you at least tie the game.
Missed field goals in the Memphis game. Missed field goals in the LSU game. All these are close losses.
He was 46 of 57 during his time in Conway. So you don't agree with that pick. I agree with you. Kicker cannot be your breakout player, especially a portal kicker.
A guy who wasn't here last year. A guy who was already good. No, I can't get behind that. That being said, Biscardi is going to have a huge role for Mississippi State. State needed a good kicker last year. They would have been a 9-win team in all likelihood if they just had a solid kicker. If Brandon Ruiz doesn't get hurt, they would have been an 8 or 9-win team. Maybe even more. So you can't understate the importance that Biscardi is going to have. Huge role, no question. But to call him a breakout player, I believe you're missing the definition of breakout player. And when we talk about Ole Miss in a second, I'm going to say the exact same thing.
We'll look at that now. He picked Zach Evans. He said the Rebels will feature several new faces offensively that Lane Kiffin will flex as hot rod playmakers, and the TCU transfer is one. Ole Miss is extremely anxious to get on the field. Over 2 seasons at TCU, he registered more than 1,200 yards of total offense and scored 10 touchdowns. Injury-riddled, did not play full seasons at TCU. Now he looks to work alongside Jackson Dart, a new look, fast-paced attack. Ole Miss replaces its top 3 leading rushers and a couple of transfers, and Evans is the most notable.
This is a guy who it's hard to call him a breakout player. He's a 5-star player out of high school. His 2 years at TCU, he averaged like 7.5 yards a carry. I mean, we already know he's a good football player, and he's coming into a situation where Ole Miss doesn't have any guys. All of their running backs now are transfer guys. They don't have one. Yeah, but they don't have the guys they had a year ago. So he's going to get carries, and a new quarterback. They're probably going to lean on the running. I say lean on the running game. They've led the SEC in rushing. I just don't. That's not what a breakout player is to me. Like if I were going to pick one from Ole Miss, Jonathan Mingo.
That's the one that I picked. You jerk.
I mean, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
He was, the third leading receiver a year ago? Now he needs to be the number one guy.
He was on pace to have a really good year before he got hurt, and the injury kind of derailed that. They need him to have a good year. That would have been my pick for Ole Miss is Jonathan Mingo as a breakout player, a guy
Who's their defensive guy then?
Cedric Johnson
Okay.
would be the defensive guy for me. Had a good year last year opposite Sam Williams. You're going to have more regular fronts for Ole Miss, I think. They did the 3-2-6 thing basically out of necessity. Mm-hmm. Their best players were in the secondary. They were pretty thin on the defensive line, they felt, for a while, and they just kind of did that because they had to. The early thoughts out of spring is you're going to see more traditional fronts from Ole Miss, more four-down defensive lines, and I think now with Cedric Johnson being the primary pass rusher, if you will, the guy with the most experience and the stats to back that up, rushing the passer, with a more traditional front where not every guy's getting doubled on a pass play, I think he will be a guy that nobody knows about, that come the end of October, people start recognizing as a good defensive end in the SEC. So those would be my picks. Mingo and Cedric Johnson, the defensive end. Here's a couple from you guys before we get to the rest of the SEC. Somebody says Caleb Duckin, the breakout player.
Possible. Picking a receiver is just smart, right? I mean, this is an offense that features the wide receiver. Somebody has to replace Mekhi Polk. Duckin is as good a candidate as anybody.
Somebody says Braylon Brown for Ole Miss. That's a good choice. People were really high on him going into the season, then he got hurt last year. Text from the 901 says, I agree the kicker shouldn't be the breakout, but who would you choose for MSU? Sorry, that's a little bit late.
Picked Ra Thomas.
Ra gotta love the name. Every fan loves to yell rah.
Yeah.
JJ Henry, another one. Like that. It's also a good pick.
It doesn't have to be somebody who's off the beaten path. Like if you told me to pick one for Southern Miss, Ty Keys.
Ty Keys.
I think Ty Keys, now that he's established himself and is going to be the starter, I think that he's going to have a monster year.
Thailand Knight also. I mean,
Thailand
I know
Knight
he's a
choice.
He's a transfer though.
Yeah, it's a transfer, but and
the
he's changing positions, right?
The Sun Belt is going to be terrorized by that guy for 12
Yeah, I mean,
games.
and changing over to offense, I think that's a good fit for him. I'm interested to see what Janari Dean does on the offensive side of the ball. And that's a guy I had big expectations for when he signed with State in their secondary, but it just never panned out.